as the human species, we forget that we are part of this. We are part of this. When we die, these plants recycle us. We become part of this. So maybe we have been recycled many times. Sometimes we have been plants. Sometimes we have been animals. Sometimes we are humans. But we definitely, as a species, tend to dissociate ourselves from this system and tend to separate ourselves from this system and definitely forget that we belong to this system. We are from this system. This system nurtures us. We are the food we eat, the air we breathe, thanks to these green fellows who clean the air for us. They take the carbon dioxide. That's why we are saying we need to plant many of them so as to help us stop the global warming.
Naitwa Dhoita Mwangi, Dhoita wa mathieta, mana host wa stories za Dhoita, mana thespian mwenyewe, mana guide through this nature walk ya Wangarĩ Maathai's life and achievements. And the name of the show is Memory Keepers, brought to you by Stories Zetu. Watu wali for birds. Najua by sai. Already si unawangam. Aya, best in the world. Before she was famous as the matriarch of science in Kenya for Africa and the world, Professor Wangarĩ Maathai was a child in a village called Ihithe, which means something hidden, like the intellectual potential within her back then. Ridges were lined with indigenous crops like doma, guashe, ikwa, jahe, cowpeas, millet, and sorghum. Wangari's father worked in Nakuru, where European settlers had introduced foreign forms of agricultural monoculture. Seeds of wheat, potatoes, and maize. The two landscapes told different stories of biodiversity. Soil was taken for granted, tens of tons lost, with capitalists ignoring that the earth may need 400 years to restore 1 centimeter. Women made up the majority of farm workers, producing a significant share of the world's food. Young Wangari was introduced to this reality early, learning sustainable pest and diseases management, seed diversity, enabling resilience and abundant harvest. In the forest around her home, like generations before, Wangari learned about the sanctity of the mugumo and other indigenous trees. Conserving trees is guarding memory and protecting wisdom. The life-giving strength of Moringa, the medicinal wealth of the Prunus, Africanus, the Motondo, the Muthiga calming toothache, and the multiple benefits of Morobaine. Some of these indigenous trees take up to 30 years to mature. Wangari's mother will tell her stories about walking to the Rift Valley, taking shortcuts through the Aberdare Forest with her friends, resting by the mountain stream while watching the thin abundant fish swimming in clear waters. Rivers like the Gura could be heard from home as they rush through the gorges. When science became a bridge in a storm, opening doors across borders, Wangari found herself pursuing her master's in Pittsburgh. The city was then dealing with environmental consequences brought by decades of steel manufacturing. Activists were pushing for less air pollution. This planted a seed. She returned to Nairobi, then known as the Green City in the sun, for gems like City Park in Nairobi National Park. Wangari fought for the protection of Uhuru Park, the preservation of Karura Forest, conservation of Aberdares, and maintenance of Jivanjee Gardens. At the University of Nairobi, Wangari's career broke all professional and gender norms, opening doors for generations of women to pursue scientific careers. Her most impactful action was getting science out of the lab and into the hands of rural women. Trees planting led to political education and civic engagement, setting the stage for her last conflict with Moi's Kanu regime as they tried to steal thousands of forest land in a last grab. This was in the late 1990s. The earlier struggle had worked and the country finally had multi-party politics. Wangari's big campaign was with the middle ground, doing their best to unite the fragmented opposition. The idea would only take root in the early 2000s with the formation of the NARC coalition that finally ousted the dictatorship, Kenyans could finally enjoy the kind of democracy Wangarĩ Maathai's generation had dreamt of at independence. Towards the end of her life, the post-election violence monster she had agitated against for years showed itself in full force. The 2007 to 2008 disaster grew from 1992 and 1997. It was Kenya at its darkest. Half a century since Wangari first noticed the disappearing of indigenous foods, we are in a worse situation. Fast foods and processed foods have taken over. International corporations are waging war against our seeds. It is no longer public knowledge that 200 indigenous plant species can be used as leafy vegetables in Kenya. 70% of them are classified as weeds. The Aberdare Forest Wangari's mother walked through is under threat. A planned road project will destroy thousands of ancient trees. Scientists in Wangari's field tell us that 38% of trees, that is 1 million species, are at risk of extinction globally. Since Wangari became the Assistant Minister for Environment, Kenya lost 54,000 hectares of humid primary forest, accounting for 14% of the country's total tree cover loss. She showed us the right way. We chose to fail her. And then as an insult, the destructive road project is planned to begin in Ihithe at Wangari's doorstep. The clear rivers full of fish are gone, joining 402 river basins around the world where river flow has decreased 5 times since 2000. The America that taught Wangari environmental advocacy is now bombing multiple countries with catastrophic environmental consequences. As if 1/4 of the world's land area wasn't already highly degraded and undermining the well-being of 3.2 billion human beings. Nairobi is no longer the green city in the sun. All the public green spaces are under threat. Massive tree felling has amplified flooding, leading to unnecessary death of our country people. Unlike Wangari's pioneering times, there are now millions of highly educated Kenyans, thousands practicing in the scientific and social fields. The question now is, what are we willing to do to protect and restore our land and natural resources? She left us an active democracy and agitated for the rights of those affected by post-election violence. The nation sways at the edge again. Around and ahead is everything Wangari fought for, at risk or damaged. Will we follow in her footsteps?